Welcome to Ask the Mayor program. Today we are continuing this two-part series with Congressman David Scott, who was on our last program, and of course he's going to continue today. So stay tuned for Ask the Mayor. Appreciate your work in that area, and of course one of the things that most of those folks who are watching our show today are concerned about is rising fuel cost for their automobiles and things like that. What do you see when you are thinking about those alternate fuels that are being planned for and will eventually come online? What do you think that's going to do for our fuel cost? Do you see that as lowering?
Yeah, a part of our fuel costs, you got to understand, the reason for our fuel costs is secular in terms of political upheavals. In other words, unfortunately, where our main source of fuel is coming from is from these unstable regimes, whether it's Venezuela, we tried there. That's an unstable regime. And Lord knows almost all of those regimes in the Middle East have got serious problems. So it's very volatile, and OPEC is volatile. So prices are based upon not just the oil just sitting there, but all these little things around it, the political difficulties, the war that's going on in Iraq right now, and the cost of that, then the shipping and the distribution of it. So the quicker we can understand that to say goodbye to this concentration of our dependency on oil in the Middle East, that's when our prices will start to come down. That's why they fluctuate. You could go to a gas station and one week and it's $2.89 a gallon. Right. Go back to that gas station the next week, it's $3.50 a gallon.
That's exactly right.
So it's volatile based not on the matter itself, but on all of these other political and jurisdictional and volatile issues that surround these oil-producing countries. 43% of all of the known oil reserves are located under that Middle Eastern basin. And look at all the entry you got going there. Even we take a nation like Iran, which is one of the reasons why we're trying to put some sanctions on Iran, the sanctions where they could do the most good. And we can't get the cooperation of these other nations. That was the other thing we were dealing with at NATO, because here's Iran producing all of this oil.
That's right.
But here's the problem. They cannot refine it. So here's one of your top oil-producing countries.
Can't get it out.
Yeah. So, well, they get it out and get it out of the country, but they don't have the refinery capacity to turn that petroleum into gasoline. Right. So they have to import their gasoline, refined gasoline, from others. So what we've tried to do with our sanctions there is to put sanctions against countries who would invest in the refining capacity of Iran, which is getting to the other issue of how to deal with Iran, but it all works. That's what I'm talking about. And once we can get our ethanol plants, once we can move with dispatch and do what Brazil, when I was in Brazil and in Argentina, and I asked the Minister of Defense, I said, what percentage of your oil do you depend on coming in from the Middle East? Absolutely none. None. Now, if Brazil can get in that situation, if Argentina can get in that situation, what's holding us up? We've got to change the policy of dealing with the Middle East and get out of bed with places like Saudi Arabia, that we've got these kinds of relationships that are causing us to have a kind of warped, misguided policy in the Middle East, and get away from that and get our own dependency on oil. Will bring down global warming, will bring down the prices of gasoline, and we will truly be the #1 country in the world. But Brazil, because of what they're doing, is moving very, very fast in many areas, and a lot of it has to do with their energy policy, producing their own energy. The other thing is, while I was there, these cities are among the largest in the world. You're talking about in Rio de Janeiro, about 20 million people. St. Paulo, maybe 22 million people. I never heard anything like this. But the air is clear as a bell.
Well, we appreciate your work, and that's where we need to end up. I think all of us realize that, and I appreciate you sharing with us the things that are being done on a congressional level to deal with those issues. I know that you serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee,
Yes.
and you're the vice chairman of the Terrorism Committee. And I know I'm switching gears on you, but security and protection of our freedoms here in the city are naturally important to all of us, and we've talked a little bit about the COPS program, but terrorism is still an issue, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and some of the initiatives.
Well, there's so many tangents of it. The first thing is we've got to maintain a strong national security. Okay? We are still the #1 source of protector of the world in terms of this war on terror. We've got to rebuild, reconstitute, re-strengthen our military. One of the side deals of why this war in Iraq has been so costly is because it has the wear and tear on the military. We are now at a readiness level that is mighty, mighty weak. We have usurped our National Guard. We have men and women who are on tour over in the Middle East, and especially in Afghanistan and Iraq, on their 3rd and 4th tours. This war has lasted now longer than World War II. We're involved in a multi-layered situation of civil war upon civil war. Many of these folks over there have been fighting ever since Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Esau, and Ishmael, and the Prophet Muhammad and his son-in-law, which brought the Shias and the Sunnis. They're fighting. It's a problem there. So the first order of business is for us to understand that this war cannot go on. It cannot continue because it exasperates our military strength. The other reason I say that is that has to stop because since we've been involved the way we have been in there, we've dissipated so much of our resources. That's why Iran is popping up its head. That's why we're getting the problems over in Pakistan. That's why now, because of what Iran is doing, if we don't move forthrightly and we allow Iran to get nuclear weapons, we've got a serious problem. That's why we are working very feverishly to get what we call a missile defense system that is set up basically in Czechoslovakia, in that region in Czechoslovakia. That's why we've got to be careful with our relationships with Turkey, one of our strongest allies, but it is pivotal in where it sits. And then when we get into Iraq, we've got not just the civil war there with the Shias and the Sunnis. Then you got the Kurds up in the other area. Then you've got the problem of the oil, which is all about, we touch upon it the other way, and that's why our oil prices go up and down and fluctuate
so much.
The problem is we need to take leadership and understand this is a political problem. This is a diplomatic problem. And as long as we have our soldiers in the crosshairs of this civil war, the only thing that does, it kills our soldiers. One day they're shooting at Sunnis, the next day they're shooting at Shias, the next day they're shooting at Baathists, and sometimes they're shooting at Al-Qaeda. You just never know. But where they have made good results is when they decide for themselves. You've got to remember in this process, our initial approach into Iraq was to find weapons of mass destruction. We all know bad information, bad intelligence, all of that. But once you realize that and you know it's a mistake here in what we've done, you don't continue to send our young men and women in there. These are 18 and 19-year-old kids. I've been over there for 3 times. I've been to Landstuhl Air Base Hospital at Ramstedt Air Base in Germany. You want to know about this war, Mayor? You go in that hospital where they come off the battlefield.
Right.
And you sit with those 19 and 18-year-old kids with their arms blown off and all of that. And they look in your eyes and they say, Congressman, why? When 70% of the Iraqi people themselves, when the question was put to them, what do you think? Do you think is it justifiable for us to be shooting these American soldiers who are over here to protect us? 70% say yes.
Mm-hmm.
This is a serious problem that has to be worked out in there. We need to get our kids back out of that harm's way, stop losing life, rebuild our military. We can't leave the area,
Right.
but we can rearrange our involvement there to contain the situation so that we can deal with what now is the bigger threats.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest threat is Iran. The bigger threat is Syria. Now, about a month ago, Israel came in and took out the Syrian nuclear reactor over there. Our intelligence showed, we got great intelligence. You ever see the movie The Enemy of the State?
Yes.
With Will, I can't think of Will's last name, but it's a pretty good movie. It shows how the technology is a satellite moving, can get
And
a
you can
pin
see the
drop.
troops moving, yes.
We saw Korean technicians on the ground at the nuclear plant in Syria. The reason that we were fighting so hard to keep North Korea from getting the nuclear weapons isn't because they drop it on somebody. It's because the fact it's a starving nation, it's a poor nation, they don't have food over there, and they're using this to get cash money. So they're undermining and working with serious capacity of getting this. And I'm sure it's all the way around the board. So to answer your question, very, very briefly again, is we got to get out of our miry clay in Iraq, redeploy our troops, build our troops, take care of our veterans, the commitment is there, and build our army back. We have to stop dallying around with cutting the defense budget and not getting the F-22s we need up here in Lockheed or the C-130s. If the Air Force says we need 140, give them 140.
Mm-hmm.
And stop nickel and diming, because the thing is that we're the only vanguard. But we're the vanguard because of our military strength.
Right.
If we dissipate that, as we dissipate, these ugly things raise their heads like Iraq. And again, finally, the situation in Pakistan right now, with that area now bordering on, as I asked Condoleezza Rice in the meeting before our Foreign Affairs, I said, Ms. Rice, I said, how close are we to a civil war in Pakistan? If that happens, and Pakistan has nuclear weapons, and they've worried about Musharraf, whether he continues as a general over the army and as president of the country,
Right.
I said, well, the question ought to be, who controls the atomic weapons?
Yes. And we probably know the answer to that.
We know the answer to that. So it's a big area. We hadn't got taught to China, which is really eating our lunch on trade and causing other huge problems. Russia and Putin is, and that's the other thing. Russia now, look at Putin. He's acting like Khrushchev. I mean, he's, okay.
Oh,
so my point is, as we continue to dissipate our military strength and if I know our military is wearing down, if I know our level of readiness is where it is, even if we had other contingencies we had to deal with that threaten us, would we be ready to do it? That question need never have to even be examined, because in order for us to maintain our position in the world, we've got to maintain the strongest possible military power we can. Pray we never have to use it,
That's right.
but as it dissipates, we get weaker.
Well, and thank goodness, the local papers called me the other day and they wanted a quote about what are you most thankful for Thanksgiving coming up. And one of the things I said is I am thankful for the men and women who wear the uniform that protect all of our freedoms day in and day out.
But Mayor, I want to tell you this, if I may, before you close. You mentioned that. I agree with you so 100%. When I was in Iraq, we had to go and make a decision whether, when we get to Camp Victory, when we get to Baghdad, whether we would go to Camp Victory and eat with the soldiers, eat supper with the soldiers. They said, well, we don't want to take the congressman there at night. We can take you, it was daylight, we'd take you in the helicopter, but we can't bring you back in the helicopter at night. You'd have to take the road, which is filled with IEDs. And a couple of congressmen there said, okay. But I said, no. I said, I'm not coming all the way over here, and I'm not going to break bread with these soldiers. If they can put up with this day in and day out, what's one day for me?
That's right.
And upon that, if God had protected me all the way across these waters to get here. He'll protect me from Camp Victory on the ground back to get into the plane to go back. And I'm so glad we went, because I got there and they brought us around where we saw the soldiers. And we got a picture of all this on my website too. Soldiers were there from Georgia. This one soldier came up to me and he just hugged me. Tight as I don't know what. I'm hugging him, he hugging me. Tears coming down his eyes, tears coming down my eyes. And he says to me, Congressman Scott, when I'm hugging you, it's like I'm hugging a piece of home.
That's right, because you are from home. Yeah, you really are.
I can't tell you how that may. I will never forget that as long as I live. And that's why I'm committed to these soldiers. Yeah. And that's why at the first opportunity for prayer and thanksgiving, I hope every American will say, thank you for these troops and the sacrifices they're putting on their lives on the line in the war zone in Iraq and Afghanistan. Thank them.
Well, and you're exactly right. And let me close by saying thank you.
My pleasure.
We are proud of you.
Thank you.
We thank you for all that you're doing for
Thank
those
you.
of us who live here in the city of Douglasville.
Thank you very much.
Well, wasn't that a great interview with Congressman Scott? As we close out this year, 2007, we're looking forward to 2008 and having some great interviews for you of subjects that are important to all of us here in the city of Douglasville. So we're looking forward to a great 2008 on Ask the Mayor. So please keep your questions coming. We love to answer those on Ask the Mayor. Hi, I'm Mickey Thompson, Mayor of the City of Douglasville, wishing you and your family a very happy holiday season.